After 11 weeks of war in Gaza, the Israeli military campaign against Hamas now sits among the deadliest and most destructive in recent history. Today is Friday, December 22nd, 2023, and this is the Dunkley Report. After 11 weeks of war in Gaza, the Israeli military campaign against Hamas now sits among the deadliest and most destructive in recent history. The Palestinian death toll has surpassed 20,000, and a satellite data shows that 1/3 of structures across the tiny enclave have been destroyed. A data analyst says that Gaza is now a different color from space as a result of the bombardment and shelling. The Israeli military has said little about what kinds of bombs and artillery it is using. But from blast fragments found on site and their analyses of strike footage, experts are confident that the vast majority of the bombs dropped on Gaza are U.S. made. A report from the United Nations finds that more than 500,000 people in Gaza are starving because there's not enough food entering the territory since the outbreak of war more than 10 weeks ago. World Food Program chief economist Arif Hussein says pretty much everybody in Gaza is hungry. He warned that if the war between Israel and Hamas continues at the same levels and food deliveries are not restored, the population could face a full-fledged famine within the next 6 months. Israel says it's in the final stages of clearing out Hamas militants from northern Gaza, but it expects months of fighting ahead in the south. Prague's police chief says a lone gunman opened fire in a university, killing at least 14 people and injuring 25 more. Police and the Czech Republic's Interior Ministry say the gunman in the mass shooting Thursday is also dead. Authorities have not released the shooter's name, but the police chief says he was a student at the university. Police officers sealed off Jan Palach Square and evacuated the philosophy department building of Charles University, where the shooting took place. Authorities are searching the area, including the building's balconies, for explosives. The UN Security Council has again delayed a vote on a watered-down resolution to deliver desperately needed aid to Gaza. The United States now backs the resolution, but other countries support a stronger text that would include the now eliminated call for the urgent suspension of hostilities between Israel and Hamas. The revised draft resolution was discussed behind closed doors for over an hour by council members. Because there were significant changes, many said they needed to consult their capitals before a vote, which is now expected Friday. U.S. Ambassador Linda Thomas Greenfield told reporters that the United States backs the new text, and if it is put to a vote, the U.S. will support it. Prosecutors say a defense contractor at the center of one of the biggest bribery scandals in U.S. military history is expected to face additional charges following his return to the United States from Venezuela as part of a broader prisoner swap between the two countries. Leonard Glenn Francis, who is nicknamed Fat Leonard, faced a federal judge for the first time since snipping off his ankle monitor last year and disappearing weeks before a sentencing hearing on charges that he offered more than $500,000 in cash bribes to Navy officials, defense contractors, and others. The year started with high hopes for Ukrainian troops planning a counteroffensive against Russia. It ended with a disappointing stalemate on the battlefield and anxiety about the future of Western aid for Ukraine's war effort. In between, there was a foiled rebellion in Russia, a dam collapse in Ukraine, a near-nuclear disaster, and the spilling of much blood on both sides of the conflict. Nearly 2 years since it invaded, Russia has about 1/5 of Ukraine in its grip, and the roughly 620-mile front line has barely budged this year. Congo is wrapping up its second day of voting after a chaotic rollout and lengthy delays forced election officials to extend voting hours. The Election Commission says Thursday that a delay in deploying certain materials and equipment resulted in some polls opening late and others not opening at all on Wednesday. It says the stations that didn't open will allow people to cast their ballots between 6 a.m. and 5 p.m. on Thursday in parliamentary, presidential, and provincial elections. At polling stations where voting has ended, ballots are now being counted. Local residents stayed outside some sites through the night to monitor the counting. The UN says fighting between Sudan's military and a notorious paramilitary group forced up to 300,000 people to flee their homes in a province that had been a safe haven for families displaced by the country's devastating conflict. The fighting erupted in the city of Wad Medani, which is the provincial capital of Jazeera province, after the Rapid Support Forces attacked the city earlier this month. The RSF said it took over Wad Medani earlier this week, and the military said its troops withdrew from the city, and an investigation was opened. Sudan's war began in mid-April. The UN agency International Organization for Migration said Thursday that between 250,000 and 300,000 people fled the province to safer areas. The European Union has paid the final tranche of a multi-billion euro support package to Ukraine to help keep its war-ravaged economy afloat this year. It's unclear what financial help the EU might provide the country from January, almost 2 years into the war. Hungary is blocking a plan to provide $55 billion in financial aid, and U.S. lawmakers are holding up an additional $61 billion for Ukraine. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen announced on Thursday the 2023 support had come to an end on Thursday. She offered no hint of what might happen next. EU leaders are set to meet on February 1st to try to break the deadlock. A wildcat strike by staff at Eurotunnel, which links Britain and the European continent and paralyzed dozens of Eurostar trains, has ended. It ended Thursday, the same day it began, Eurotunnel announced, promising a gradual return to service. Eurostar trains will start transporting passengers on Friday, and the rail navette, known as Le Shuttle, which carries vehicles and passengers, was to return to duty starting Thursday night, along with freight trains. The unannounced strike, triggered by what Eurotunnel staff said was an insufficient bonus, caused outrage and disarray in train stations. As travelers on both sides of the English Channel tried to join families and friends for the Christmas holidays. Today's news was reported by the Associated Press. This has been the World News for Friday, December 22nd, 2023. Thanks again for joining us at the Dunkley Report.